Hello, I am Dr. Himani Upadhyay, Assistant Professor in Cardiology at UN Mehta Institute of Cardiology and Research Center, Ahmedabad. And today we are going to discuss pregnancy and heart disease. It complicates around 0.2 to 4% of all pregnancies. It increases risk to both mother and fetus. It is the second most common non-obstetrical cause of maternal mortality. May manifest for the first time during pregnancy due to hemodynamic changes, and the most common complications are heart failure and arrhythmias. This is the outline of today's discussion. We will see normal physiologic hemodynamic changes, risk stratification of various heart diseases, preconception care and management, followed by specific cardiovascular conditions including valvular heart disease, cardiomyopathies, ischemic heart disease, and arrhythmias. So, these are the normal physiological hemodynamic changes during pregnancy. To meet the metabolic demands of the fetus, there is increase in blood volume, cardiac output, and heart rate. The cardiac output increases by 40 to 50%, stroke volume by 30%, heart rate by 15 to 25%, and there is increase in intravascular volume by 45%. The systemic vascular resistance decreases by 20%. The systolic BP remains same, but there is 20% decrease in diastolic BP at mid-pregnancy, and at term, the diastolic BP is at the pre-pregnancy values. The CVP remains unchanged, and there is 30 to 40% increase in oxygen consumption. Apart from cardiovascular system, other system also undergo significant changes. There is increase in metabolic rate and oxygen consumption. There is mild compensated respiratory alkalosis. So, feeling of breathlessness during pregnancy can be there. There is increase in plasma flow. There is increase in glomerular functional rate and increase in proteinuria. There is increase in plasma volume and red cell mass, increase in coagulation factors, and decrease in protein C. So, this will lead to a hypercoagulable state during pregnancy and increased risk of thromboembolism during pregnancy. Lipid metabolism also undergoes significant changes. There is increase in triglycerides, total cholesterol, increase in LDL cholesterol, and decrease in HDL cholesterol. So, existing maternal dyslipidemia is associated with adverse pregnancy outcomes. There is increase in insulin resistance during pregnancy and can lead to gestational diabetes. So, changes during labor. There is increase in pain and anxiety, and due to uterine contraction, there is increase in heart rate and blood pressure. With each uterine contraction, about 500 ml of blood into venous system, and our cardiac output increases by 50% above the baseline during second stage and maybe even higher at the time of delivery. So, the periods of greatest risk for pregnant patient of cardiac events are early third trimester, labor and delivery, and immediate postpartum period. Women with heart disease may not tolerate such intense hemodynamic changes and may cause irreversible hemodynamic deterioration. So, as we have already seen, there is increase in cardiac output, heart rate and CVP during labor. Now, during postpartum period, the cardiac output starts to decline and it reaches its baseline pre-pregnancy value by 12 to 24 weeks. Heart rate decreases and reaches to pre-pregnancy value by 2 weeks, and stroke volume also decreases. This bar diagram shows the comparison between the major complications, arrhythmia and pulmonary edema during pregnancy. As we can see, before third trimester, the frequency of arrhythmias are more, and in third trimester, labor and postpartum period, there is more incidence of pulmonary edema. So, what are the indications for echo screening in pregnancy? If patient is having progressive or limiting dyspnea, there is suspected heart failure, known physiological systolic murmur more than grade 3, any diastolic murmur, unexpected ECG changes, elevated BNP, or patient is known case of heart disease. What are the normal echo findings in pregnancy? So LV and LA dimension and volume may increase. LV wall thickness and mass may increase, but LV and RV ejection fraction remain unchanged. There is increase in stroke volume, increased velocity across the valves. So there may be folds increased in systolic and diastolic gradients to assess severity of mitral stenosis and aortic stenosis. Planimetry to assess the valve area is recommended. There is possibility of physiological TR, PR, MR and AR. Small pericardial effusion is also normal during pregnancy. For risk stratification of various cardiac diseases, the most accepted one is WHO classification. Apart from this, other classification and predictor scores are available like Karprik score, Zahara and Khere predictors, Davy score. The WHO classification stratifies heart diseases into 5 classes. Class 1, there is no detectable increase in risk of maternal mortality, but there is mild increase in maternal morbidity. So, small or mild pulmonary stenosis, PDA, mitral valve prolapse, successfully repaired ASD, VSD, PDA, atrial or ventricular ectopic beats are included in class 1. Class 2, there is small increase in maternal mortality and morbidity, unoperated ASD, VSD, repaired TOF, most arrhythmias including supraventricular arrhythmias, Turner syndrome without aortic dilatation comes under class 2. Class 2 or class 3, there is intermediate increased risk of maternal mortality and morbidity. That includes mild LV dysfunction, EF more than 45%, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, native or tissue valve heart disease, not included in WHO class 1 or class 4, Marfan or other heritable thoracic aortic syndromes without aortic dissections, aorta less than 45 mm in association with bicuspid aortic valve pathology, repaired coarctation and atrioventricular septal defect. Class 3, there is significantly increased risk of maternal mortality and severe morbidity, moderate LV dysfunction, previous peripartum cardiomyopathy without residual LV impairment, mechanical heart valve, systemic right ventricle with good or mildly decreased ventricular function, unrepaired cyanotic heart disease, other complex congenital heart disease, moderate mitral stenosis, severe asymptomatic aortic stenosis, moderate aortic dilatation and ventricular tachycardia. Class 4, there is extremely high risk both for maternal mortality and morbidity, pulmonary hypertension, severe systemic ventricular dysfunction with EF less than 30%, previous peripartum cardiomyopathy with any residual left ventricular impairment, severe mitral stenosis, severe symptomatic aortic stenosis, severe aortic dilatation, vascular Ehlers-Danlos loss, Fontan with any complication and severe recoarctation. So the previous Karprik risk score was having 4 predictors, and a patient having more than one predictor, the frequency of cardiac events was as high as 75%. Then the Karprik risk 2 score is having 10 predictors, and each predictor is assigned some points, and in patient with more than 4 points, the frequency of maternal cardiac event are as high as 41%. In general, the high risk cardiac lesion in pregnancy are Eisenmenger syndrome or severe pulmonary hypertension, prior peripartum cardiomyopathy with reduced LV ejection fraction, severe hereditary thoracic aortopathy, Marfan syndrome with aorta more than 45 mm or prior aortic replacement, vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, Turner syndrome with index aortic dimension more than 25 mm per meter square or high risk features, bicuspid aortopathy with aorta more than 50 mm, Loeys-Dietz syndrome, symptomatic severe aortic or mitral stenosis, LVEF less than 30% or ventricular assist device, Fontan procedure with any complication and coronary artery dissection. So this slides shows the drugs that are considered safe during pregnancy, the drugs which we need to be cautious during pregnancy, and the drugs that are considered contraindicated during pregnancy and breastfeeding. So the preferred mode of delivery, vaginal or CS. The preferred mode is vaginal, but absolute cardiac indication for cesarean section are dilatation of ascending aorta more than 40 mm in Marfan syndrome and more than 45 mm in bicuspid aortopathy, native severe coarctation of aorta, and patients on oral anticoagulation in preterm labor. CS can be considered in severe symptomatic aortic stenosis, Eisenmenger syndrome, and severe LV dysfunction. During labor, lateral decubitus position to attenuate the hemodynamic impact of uterine contraction, avoid maternal pushing to avoid unwanted effects of Valsalva. Delivery may be assisted by low forceps or vacuum extraction to cut short second stage of labor, and continuous electronic fetal heart rate monitoring is advised. Now we will see specific cardiovascular conditions, and the first is valvular heart diseases. So rheumatic heart diseases are the most common acquired valve diseases, account for up to 90%. Mitral valve diseases are more common than aortic valve diseases. Maternal and fetal risk correlate with type and severity of valve lesion. Now acute rheumatic fever, carditis and congestive cardiac failure of acute rheumatic fever may be fatal. Incidence of Sydenham chorea in pregnancy can cause preterm labor, fetal and maternal death. So rheumatic prophylaxis, if indicated, must be continued during pregnancy. Now first we will see mitral stenosis and its impact in pregnancy in women with mitral stenosis. During antepartum period, due to hypervolemia and increase in heart rate, there is increase in transmitral gradient. During labor, with uterine contraction and autotransfusion of venous retin, there is increased risk of pulmonary congestion and pulmonary edema. There is increased atrial irritability and hypercoagulability. So there is increased risk of AF and LA clot. Rheumatic MS is the most common valve disease detected during pregnancy, may become symptomatic first time during pregnancy. Mild MS is well tolerated, but moderate to severe MS may worsen. Symptoms occur in 25% of patients, and they are apparent by 20th week, and they aggravate at the time of labor and delivery. So for preconception management of MS, mild MS should be kept on medical management, but moderate or severe MS, if symptomatic, BMV is recommended if valve morphology is suitable. In asymptomatic patients, they should be undergone exercise testing, and if pulmonary artery pressure is more than 50 mm Hg, then intervention is recommended. Intervention can be also considered in special cases where facility for antenatal care or urgent BMV is not available. For antepartum management of MS, beta blockers, diuretics are considered safe. BMV is preferably recommended after 20 weeks of gestations in refractory symptomatic patients with NYHA 3 or 4 with systolic pulmonary artery pressure more than 50 mmHg. Anticoagulation should be given for paroxysmal or permanent AF with LA thrombus or any prior embolic events. It can be considered in severe MS with spontaneous echo contrast and LA volume index more than 60 ml per meter square with low cardiac output and congestive cardiac failure. So, what are the hazards for BMV during pregnancy? It may lead to severe MR and may require emergency MVR. There is risk of cardiac tamponade, systemic embolism, maternal arrhythmia. They may lead to fetal distress, uterine contraction and premature labor. Long-term effects of low dose of radiation for the fetus is still questionable. So this table shows that what are the effects of various anticoagulation drugs for maternal and fetal outcome. So vitamin K antagonists are having least maternal mortality, but the live birth estimates are also less, whereas LMWH and unfractioned heparin, the maternal mortality estimates are higher, but the live birth estimate is also higher. So which anticoagulation is safe? Warfarin, there is low risk of maternal thromboembolism but higher fetal risk. Heparin, there is high risk of maternal thromboembolism but improves fetal outcome. So warfarin and vitamin K antagonist can lead to embryopathy and fetopathy. But the risk of embryopathy is dose dependent. With the dose of warfarin less than 5 mg per day and acinocomerol less than 2 mg per day, the risk of embryopathy is as low as 0.9%. But it is high with increased dose, that is more than 5 mg per day of warfarin and more than 2 mg per day of acinocomerol. There is no safe regimen and shared decision making is always recommended. Vaginal delivery is contraindicated in patients on oral anticoagulation. There is risk of intracranial bleed. Cesarean section should be done after reversal of anticoagulation. This is the recommended anticoagulation strategy on patients on oral anticoagulation. If the target INR is achieved with the dose of warfarin less than 5 mg or acinocomerol less than 2 mg per day, then oral anticoagulation should be considered throughout the pregnancy. But if the required dose is more than that, then discontinuation of them between 6 to 12 weeks and replacement with unfractioned heparin, but under APTT monitoring or LMWH twice daily, but anti-10A level should be monitored, and oral anticoagulation should be discontinued and unfractioned heparin or adjusted dose of LMWH should be started at 36 weeks. LMWH should be replaced by unfractioned heparin at least 36 hours before planned delivery, and unfractioned heparin should be continued until 4 to 6 hours before delivery and restarted 4 to 6 hours after delivery if there are no bleeding complications. If delivery starts while patient is already on oral anticoagulation, then cesarean delivery is indicated to prevent fetal bleed. MVP or mitral regurgitation in pregnancy. So MVP is generally well tolerated during pregnancy, even when there is mitral regurgitation. MVP with mild or moderate MR remain asymptomatic and do not experience any cardiac complication. Pregnancy tend to increase the frequency of atrial and ventricular premature beats. Beta blocker may be required for that. But MVP with severe MR, so dyspnea in particularly after second trimester can increase. CHF is rare. Occurrence of dyspnea and CHF does not carry a poor prognosis and can be managed by diuretics. Preeclampsia, there is increase in SVR and decrease in renal function, so there is increased risk of pulmonary congestion. Severe MR can be poorly tolerated during pregnancy only in 3 instances. If there is acute MR resulting for caudal rupture, if AF occurs with a fast ventricular rate, or there is long-standing severe MR complicated by severe LV dysfunction. Now, aortic stenosis in pregnancy, it is considered rare, about 0.5 to 3% of heart valve diseases. Most common etiology is congenital bicuspid aortic valve. Generally, mild to moderate aortic stenosis with normal LV function is well tolerated, but in severe AS, there is increased risk of heart failure and arrhythmia. For symptomatic severe AS, pre-pregnancy AVR is recommended. There is increased risk of heart failure and arrhythmia and angina if there is fixed LVOT of severe AS. There is also risk of preterm labor, IUGR and low birth weight. But if AS is diagnosed first time during pregnancy and if patient is symptomatic even on medical management and refractory to medical therapy, then if valve is pliable and absence of any calcification, balloon valvuloplasty can be tried. TAVI is also a potential option. So in severe AS, there is fixed LVOTO and there is a decrease in systemic vascular resistance during pregnancy. So there is fall in systolic BP and there is also a state of hypervolemia. So due to the fixed LVOTO, there is increase in the chances of pulmonary congestion, LV failure and ischemic symptoms. For the pharmacological management of AS during antepartum period, heart failure to be treated with diuretics and beta blockers and CCB to rate control. Pre-pregnancy intervention is required in severe symptomatic aortic stenosis patient or there is LVEF less than 50% or fall in blood pressure in TMT testing or ascending aorta dimension more than 50 mm. During pregnancy, severe symptomatic AS, if refractory to medical therapy and if valve is pliable, we can go for balloon valvuloplasty or emergency AVR. TAVI is also an potential option. AR in pregnancy, it is generally well tolerated due to low systemic vascular resistance, but severe AR with LV dysfunction or heart failure are at increased risk and they need surgery before conception. TR in pregnancy is also well tolerated. Mechanical prosthetic valves. So pregnancy in patient with mechanical prosthetic valves is associated with significant maternal and fetal risk. The most serious maternal complication is valve thrombosis. Prosthetic valve thrombosis risk is higher in pregnancy, 4.7%. There is increased risk of maternal mortality by 20%. If patient comes with PHVT during pregnancy, then low dose, low infusion of alteplase is considered safe and effective. We can give up to 6 cycles and the total cumulative dose is 150 milligrams. This is low. Surgery if thrombolysis fails or in decompensated patient with obstructive thrombosis. Surgery is associated with increased maternal and fetal morbidity and mortality. Bioprosthetic valve, there is no need for anticoagulation and are associated with better outcomes. Desire for pregnancy is class 2A indication for a biological valve, but this biological valve are at high risk of structural valve deterioration even during pregnancy. So need for redo surgery in about 80% of patients within 10 years. Now patients with heart failure, this is the most commonly used approach. So Peripartum cardiomyopathy is the most common cause, but we need to exclude the other diagnosis, familial dilated cardiomyopathy. It is considered in patient with a family history, but genetic overlap is there between peripartum cardiomyopathy and familial DCM. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, obstructive symptoms may worse by increased contractility and heart rate during pregnancy. Then left ventricular non-compaction. The trabeculation may be physiologic response to pregnancy and may not indicate LVNC. And arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy, apart from failure, there may be associated with ventricular arrhythmias, including VT during pregnancy. So, after excluding other diagnosis, the diagnosis is peripartum cardiomyopathy. And in peripartum cardiomyopathy, it is most commonly observed toward the end of pregnancy or in the postpartum period, approximately 5 months postpartum, and there is absence of other identifiable cause for heart failure, LV dysfunction with LV ejection fraction less than 45%. LV may or may not be dilated. Incidence is 1 in 100 to 4,000 live births. The risk factors are increase in age more than 30 years, African descent, multiple gestations, prior or concurrent preeclampsia, eclampsia or postpartum hypertension, oral tocolytic therapy more than 4 weeks. The clinical presentation is like any other heart failure, cough, orthopnea, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea or hemoptysis. But systemic and pulmonary embolism are more common in peripartum cardiomyopathy than other cardiomyopathies. But it is considered reversible, and these are the predictors of LV recovery. If LV diastolic dimension in less than 55 to 60 mm, LVEF is more than 30 to 35%, fractional shortening more than or equal to 20%, there is lack of troponin elevation, a lower level of plasma BNP, absence of LV thrombus, absence of breastfeeding, non-African American ethnicity. For the treatment of peripartum cardiomyopathy, if there is mild or moderate LVEF deterioration, then the guideline directed medical therapy is considered optimal. But if there is severe peripartum cardiomyopathy with EF less than 35%, cardiogenic shock or refractory symptoms with NYHA class 3 or 4, then we can consider bromocriptine with the dose of 2.5 milligram BD for 2 weeks followed by 2.5 milligram OD for 6 weeks. But if we are using bromocriptine, then to decrease the risk of thromboembolism, anticoagulation is mandatory. We can give prophylactic LMWH if not associated with other complication, but if there is decreased EF less than 35%, LV thrombus, atrial fibrillation, mechanical circulatory support, then we need to give anticoagulation in the therapeutic range. Now we will see coronary artery diseases. With the changes in lipid metabolism, there is increase in LDL and total cholesterol, increase in triglyceride, there is increased risk for ischemic events during pregnancy. Pregnancy is also a hypercoagulable state, as we have already discussed. There is increased vascular reactivity, and the hormonal changes weakens the arterial wall. So it leads to the high risk. Also in multigravida and elderly patients, postpartum and third trimester are the highest risk periods. So acute MI during pregnancy, the incidence is less, 3 per 1 lakh pregnancy. Maternal death rate is up to 5 to 10%. The most common cause is spontaneous coronary artery dissection, that is 43%, followed by atherosclerotic coronary artery diseases 27%, intracoronary thrombus 17%, and least are coronary spasm, and sometimes it may be normal also. Management of acute MI. So, blind use of thrombolytic therapy in pregnancy is not recommended. Conservative approach is preferred where possible because for SCAD, 70% of the patient are having healing on repeat coronary angiography. In case of SCAD, future pregnancy should be discouraged. Primary PTCA is the treatment of choice in atherosclerotic coronary artery diseases. Thrombolytic agents do not grow placenta but can cause placental bleeding. Beta blockers and aspirin are safe and can be given. Clopidogrel and nitrates are also safe. Statins are no longer considered contraindicated and can be given in highest risk patients of dyslipidemia with known coronary artery diseases. And known case of coronary artery disease should undergo treatment for any correctable lesion associated with ischemia before pregnancy. Now, arrhythmias. The most common arrhythmia during pregnancy are supraventricular tachyarrhythmias and can be kept on medical management for atrial flutter and fibrillation. Rate controlled is preferred over rhythm control, but in case of WPW syndrome with AF, flecainide or propafenone can be given for slowing of the conduction pathway. If recurrent arrhythmias are there, despite of medical management, then catheter ablation can be tried. Now, management of ventricular tachycardia during pregnancy. If it is acute stating and hemodynamically unstable VT, then DC cardioversion is recommended. But for hemodynamically stable patients, we can give intravenous procainamide. If VT is sustained and refractory to antiarrhythmic agents, then synchronized cardioversion should be given. In case of idiopathic VT, if fascicular VT is there, then verapamil, and if outflow tract VT is there, then intravenous beta blocker or adenosine should be given. For chronic management of VT, the first line antiarrhythmic drugs are beta blockers. If not controlled on beta blockers, then flecainide, sotalol or maxillitin can be given. But if refractory VT, even on this therapy, then catheter ablation and Cordarone are considered class 2A. So, these are the most common heart disease we come across during our practice, and this is the recommended management for these conditions. Thank you.